Hey guys, welcome back to more funny Karen stories. In this video, an entitled smug Karen worker slaps me claiming that I am a nobody. In fact, I'm actually the CEO of the company. Let's dive right into the video. So I am from Tanzania and always had a fascination with coffee, not just the drink itself, but the entire process from start to finish. The only thing that I disliked about many of the big names was that I knew they did not get their beans fresh or obtained them by unethical methods. I wanted to create something that I could both find pride in and expand what coffee would be and taste like. It wasn't quick or easy, but I managed to start my own small export company as well as a handful of stores. People could get coffee beans that were ethically sourced right here in Tanzania near Mount Kilimanjaro. I was very picky about the beans that would get used in my coffee because I wanted them to always be at the peak so the quality and taste would not suffer because of it. Small batch sizes and focus on quality control caused my company to be fairly popular despite the small size. I don't dress like what some think a CEO would be in the West. I don't really wear a suit and sit in a fancy office making everybody do the work. I'm in the office in normal working clothing like everybody else, and sometimes I'm in the shops too. I don't agree with the way certain companies and CEOs act, so I have a policy about respect. I do expect my employees to show me a certain level of respect as their boss, but in return I respect all of them back. It doesn't matter if they are high up or just somebody who cleans. Every single person gets respected by everyone else. In my country, respect is also very cultural, so I don't tend to have any problems about it. I'm upfront with how I expect people to behave in my company, and honestly, it works well. I find that my employees are relaxed and don't seem nervous if they need to come to me with a problem or concern. I'm a boss that understands life and unexpected things can happen and will not punish anybody for it. One place that I can often be found in the main office is actually in the kitchen. I managed to get a very nice and modern building for my company to work out of and made sure to add a kitchen for two reasons. The first one so that everybody has a place to put and eat their food on breaks, and the second, I wanted a space where I could work on making different tastes and infusions of the coffee. I found that my own employees enjoy trying the new flavors and are honest with me about how they stand up to our existing ones. I'd been working with a marketing agency in an attempt to get a new marketing campaign going in order to boost awareness of my company and sales. I was told that they would be sending somebody but wasn't given an exact time, so I was not worried about it and did my day as normal. Actually, I was working on a new blend, but I will explain that more in a moment. The person who arrived was a woman who in the West would be called Karen, so I will call her that as well. She was a middle-aged expatriate, which, I won't lie, worried me a little bit. I wanted to make sure the marketing would fit well for locals, and since she was not from here, I was not sure if she would be able to do that. Anyway, I knew all this before she arrived, and the company assured me that she had been here long enough and everything would be fine. I did not know when she came in, but as she got closer to the kitchen, I could already hear her complaining about things. She was much louder than anybody else, and heads were probably turning the moment she walked into the door. She did not greet a single person and instead just started walking around and complaining. From what I was told later, somebody tried to greet her respectfully, but she even complained about that. I could hear her before coming into the kitchen and already did not like the things she was saying. Karen, stupid African ways of doing things. Wasting all this time and the CEO does not even have an office. You would think a coffee company would at least know how to do things right. I did not greet Karen, but instead just continued to watch and listen as she entered the kitchen and walked around. Karen, and they call this a kitchen. All of this stuff looks 1000 years old and the coffee probably is just dirt and water he found on the ground. Another member of staff in the kitchen greeted Karen and she seemed to get annoyed just from somebody having manners and respect. Karen, I better taste this slop before I go and find the idiot that runs this place. She then turned right towards me and must have seen that I was holding a traditional coffee pot and pouring it into a small cup to see if it was ready yet. She looked into the cup and looked horrified as if I had poured blood instead of coffee. She was very rude and just started demanding that I make her a cup of coffee. Then went on a long tangent of what she wanted to drink that was so full of sweeteners and flavorings, I don't think she would have been able to even taste the coffee. And by the way guys, for some reason that reminds me of that funny bit that Conan O'Brien had, where he tasted coffee with Jordan Schlansky, and then Conan put all sorts of whipped cream and instant hot chocolate into the coffee. I'd recommend you check that out on YouTube. Just search for Team Coco and coffee. It's really funny. Anyway, not to even mention that this wasn't a shop and I didn't have any kind of those things in the office. We did not make coffee the way that she was asking for it. Me, we don't have that, but I just create a new blend for my employees to try, and you may have a cup of that if you want. It'll be done soon. Karen, that coffee looks horrible. I'll probably get sick if I drink that considering the primitive way you made it. Plus those cups are tiny and won't hold nearly enough. Me, it's just enough for a taste. In fact, this could be the coffee blend for the marketing campaign. Karen laughed right in my face and told me that there was no way something a lowly kitchen worker made with my ugly pot would make it into a campaign. Despite saying that I was making it for my employees, she still didn't seem to understand who I was. I informed her that I was the CEO of the coffee company and did not appreciate her comments. Karen got angry and started screaming that I was a liar about being the CEO because a real CEO would never be working in the kitchen. She started to scream that I was trying to poison her and it was getting more attention as people started coming to the kitchen. By killing her, she meant offering her coffee from a traditional pot, which she considered dirty. Karen, you're a nobody. You should learn your place and not even speak to people like me. I wish that I never did speak to people like her because I would be happy if this was the last Karen I ever met in my life. She once again claimed what real coffee was, her sugary disaster that made my teeth hurt thinking of it. She then slapped me and nearly made me drop the pot and break it. I was lucky that I caught it, but I didn't catch it the right way up. The pot was now upside down and the entire tasting batch of my new brew was now all over the floor and ruined. I was beyond angry at her and put down the pot before standing up straight and towering over her. Me, I'm the CEO and have been shown nothing but disrespect since you walked through my doors. I don't know who you think you are, but I want you to get out and you can be sure that I will be calling your boss and telling him everything. Karen, you're lying. I want to speak to the real CEO and he will make sure you are fired. Where's OP? I want to speak to him now. I need somebody to find me OP this second. I guess people assume I wasn't there because more employees come into the kitchen and as soon as they see me say Mishimima, my surname, pronounce Mishimiwa for my Western friends, this is a title of respect which Karen knows enough about our culture to understand. I repeat myself to Karen about wanting her to leave and that I'll be reporting her to her supervisor. I explained to her how important the coffee blend I was making was and how many weeks I had spent tweaking it and trying to make it perfect only to now need to start again and waste time. She does not want to leave still, so I decided to turn my attention to my employees. I asked them directly if they felt Karen had disrespected them by the way she acted, and when they confirmed this, asked them to tell her why she was rude, which they did. I also called her boss who agreed to come since Karen didn't want to listen. Me, I based my company off of respect for everybody, and that means anybody that even comes to work here with me needs to show both myself and my employees respect. The things you said since you arrived showed that they didn't know you but gave you respect that you refused to return to them. If I was to hire you now, it would go against the values I built this company with. Her boss arrived and listened to what Karen did, not even believing one word of her lies. He was deeply sorry and embarrassed because of her. He apologized to not only me, but everybody in the office for what Karen had said and done. I spoke to him and he knew that the chance of me hiring his company was slim to none now. He was offering to renegotiate the contract, where I would be paying far less now and he would be the only person allowed to be involved on the project. No more employees that might cause problems. I thanked my employees for the support they gave me and especially showed me during the incident with Karen. It truly made me feel they understood the company culture I wanted and the reasons for it. It would not allow somebody like Karen to ever be a part of the team. The marketing campaign worked well after that, but I made a new rule for the office. If anybody they didn't know came in, somebody should immediately retrieve me. I would not want my staff to be treated like they were by Karen ever again. And the next one is an incredible Am I the A-hole story that is titled Are we the A-holes for replacing stolen chocolate with laxatives? And by the way, if you've watched until here, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments because that would help me tremendously. Thanks a lot. So my wife works as a senior financial analyst at a large corporation in downtown. She's been there for about 5 years and generally loves her job. The office has a pretty positive environment and she gets along well with most of her coworkers. One thing about my wife is that she is a huge chocolate enthusiast, particularly when it comes to Godiva. These are not your regular drugstore chocolates, we are talking about the premium stuff that costs around $50 per box. She keeps a small stash in her desk drawer to help her get through particularly stressful days. About 3 months ago, she started noticing something odd. Every few days, 1 or 2 pieces of chocolate would go missing from her drawer. At first she thought she might have eaten them herself and forgotten about it. You know how it goes, sometimes you grab a piece without thinking. And by the way guys, let me know in the comments, what is your favorite chocolate? And by the way, I don't want to hear any Hershey's because Hershey's are awful. I will die on this hill, let me tell you in advance. Either way, after a while, she started keeping careful track and there was no doubt anymore someone was stealing her chocolate. I just don't understand who would do this, she told me one evening, clearly upset. Everyone in my immediate team makes good money. Why would they steal my chocolate? I suggested that maybe it was an innocent misunderstanding and perhaps someone thought they were communal office snacks, but my wife shook her head and said, no way. They are in my desk drawer, not in the break room. Someone is deliberately going through my personal space. She tried several approaches to address the situation. First, she sent a general email to her team asking if anyone had been taking chocolate from her desk, saying they were welcome to ask if they wanted some, but no one responded. Then she tried leaving a note in her drawer saying these were her personal chocolates and please don't take them without asking. The thefts continued though. She even went to HR about it, but they gave her the typical corporate response of, we will look into it. Nothing changed. The most frustrating part was that the theft seemed to happen during off hours when fewer people were around, making it harder to catch the culprit. After a particularly bad week where half a box disappeared, my wife came home fuming. That's it, I've had enough. These are not just any chocolates. They are my special treat that I buy with my own money. Someone is literally stealing from me. That is when she came up with the idea. She had noticed that chocolate laxatives looked remarkably similar to her Godiva chocolates. Her plan was simple: replace the remaining chocolates with laxative squares and wait. I was hesitant at first and said, are you sure about this? What if someone has a bad reaction? These are over-the-counter laxatives, she replied. Unless someone is stupid enough to eat multiple pieces of stolen chocolate, they will just have an uncomfortable trip to the bathroom. Maybe that will teach them not to steal. I still had my doubts, but I could see how frustrated she was. The constant invasion of her personal space and property was really getting to her. Plus, we had already spent hundreds of dollars replacing stolen chocolate over the past few months, so we went ahead with the plan. She carefully wrapped each laxative square in gold foil to match the real chocolates and placed them in her drawer. Then we waited. The very next day she noticed 3 pieces missing. She also noticed something else. One of the overnight cleaning staff, who usually spend about an hour on their floor, took an unusually long time in the bathroom during their shift. The security guard mentioned it to her when she arrived early the next morning. Yeah, poor guy was in there for almost 45 minutes, the guard said. Came out looking pretty rough. Over the next few days, no more chocolates went missing. My wife replaced their laxative with real chocolate again, and surprisingly, those were not touched either. It seemed like the chocolate thief had learned their lesson. However, word somehow got around the office about what she had done. Most of her co-workers thought it was hilarious, but a few people said it was inappropriate and potentially dangerous. One colleague even suggested that she could get in trouble for booby-trapping her desk. This morning, she got called to HR. Apparently one of the cleaning staff had filed a complaint about getting sick from poisoned chocolate. They didn't admit to stealing them, but they were claiming that they found them and then got ill. HR gave her a verbal warning about creating a hostile work environment and suggested that she could face disciplinary action if anything similar happened again. My wife stood her ground in the meeting though. So you're telling me that someone admitted to taking items from my personal desk drawer without permission and I'm the one getting warned? The HR rep squirmed a bit but maintained that 2 wrongs don't make a right. When she told me about the meeting, I started wondering if we had gone too far. Yes, stealing is wrong, but was using laxatives an appropriate response? The thief definitely learned their lesson, and the chocolates have remained untouched since then, but I'm concerned about potential consequences here. My wife argues that she didn't force anyone to steal and eat the laxatives, they did that to themselves. She also points out that there's no proof she did anything wrong. She could easily argue that she legitimately uses chocolate laxatives for personal reasons and keeps them in her desk. But I can see how some might view it as an overly harsh response to a relatively minor theft. The whole situation has created a bit of tension in the office. Some colleagues have started jokingly calling her the chocolate defender and asking her to guard their snacks too, while others are giving her the cold shoulder. I'm torn about the whole thing. On one hand, I believe people who steal should face consequences. The thief was repeatedly violating my wife's personal space and property, and nothing else had stopped them. On the other hand, causing someone physical discomfort, even temporarily, feels a bit extreme. So Reddit, am I the a-hole? Should we have handled this differently? And yeah guys, let me know in the comments what you think about this one. Do you think OP and his wife were the a-holes here, or did they do the right thing? Someone on Reddit said, not the a-hole and lawyer here. While booby trapping is generally illegal, this situation is different. Your wife could easily argue she keeps laxative chocolates for personal use. The thief would have to admit to stealing to pursue an illegal action. They won't. Comment number 2, everyone sucks here, but you're the bigger a-hole. I work in HR, and this is exactly the kind of situation that can turn into a legal nightmare for everyone involved. The thief was wrong, but your wife's actions could be grounds for termination and possible legal action. She is lucky she only got a warning. Comment number 3, not the a-hole, your wife is my hero. I've had so many lunches stolen from the office fridge, and HR never does anything. Sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands, and the fact that they are trying to blame her for someone else's theft is ridiculous. Comment number 4, you're the a-hole. As a type 1 diabetic, this makes my blood boil. Do you have any idea what laxatives can do to someone's blood sugar, or how they might interact with other medications? I once had a severe hypoglycemic episode from unexpected digestive issues. I actually had to call an ambulance and everything, and sure, the thief sucks, but you could have literally killed someone over some fancy chocolate. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. I had a neighbor that was a sneaky son of a gun and tried to steal land from my family without us even being aware of it. I'm not great at measurements, and I know that a lot of people are just as bad as I am. Our land is around the size of a football field, so I'm gonna be using that as an analogy for some parts of my story. So these neighbors were pretty trashy people that my family never wanted to have much association with. I grew up and was told not to play with their kids because everybody that did ended up getting hurt. We are talking like a 7-year-old being given a BB gun with no safety instructions and told to just have fun. They grew up thinking that they were gods, and the oldest one inherited the property about 8 years ago. For a little while, it seemed like he may have grown up and acted like a responsible adult. It did not last, and soon his true colors came through when he would constantly try to mess with my family and our land, telling us that we were doing everything wrong and that the land was gonna be wasted because we were not using all of it. That part was kinda true, because despite having the large amount of land, we were only using a small percentage of it on things that would make us a profit. We just did not have the desire to expand, especially with my father getting older. None of us realized when the neighbor decided to start slowly moving into our property. When he built a new shed, we had no idea that it was actually on our side of the property. Things were getting planted on our side, and it was just such a slow, gradual thing that we were almost blind to it. Going back to the football field, imagine over 3 years he went 10, maybe 15 yards into our property, just very slowly. If he had stopped, he would have actually stolen our land and gotten away with it. Instead, he had that god complex to fulfill and got a little too big for his own good. There were some trees on our property that he was getting close to. We knew for a fact that those trees belonged to us. They were all the way on, say, the 30-yard line of the property. One day we heard noises and saw that there was a lot of sawdust in the air. We went over to see that he had a company tearing down all of our trees. Me? Whoa, stop, what are you doing to our trees? Worker, your neighbor hired us to tear them all down. He said it was his property. Me? Well, it's not, so you need to stop right now before you destroy anything else. Did you even think to look at a map of the property before just chopping everything down? I know he might not be the right person to go off on, but I was really angry and he was the person actively doing it at the moment. Worker, yes sir, I was shown a property map that said this was on his side of the line. Of course, neighbor chose then to show up and telling me to stop harassing his workers before he called the police on me. Screw that, I was going back to the house and calling the police on him because I knew for a fact that these were my trees. The police came, but they saw his paperwork that he must have faked and said that I would need to go to court for anything further. And yes, you can bet that I was getting a lawyer and suing him for everything I could get. It might seem dramatic, but those trees had a ton of memories of my siblings and my parents. Playing and laughing together, just seeing them get torn down, and not even by the landowner. I called and got a real property assessment so I could argue it in court against his fake one. So that was when I learned that he has been slowly inching his way into our property for years already. I was beyond angry, and since my dad could not handle a court case, I was allowed to appear as a stand-in for the landowner. Meanwhile, my neighbor showed up with confidence for some stupid reason. The one thing I know about egos is the harder it comes crashing down. I never met an ego bigger than his. We both showed our assessments to the judge, and of course, mine was the only valid one and stood. Neighbor claimed his was done by a legitimate assessor, but it had no paperwork or signatures and he could not even remember the name. Keep in mind, this was all a civil case, so charges for anything he did was not during this. This was so I could prove it was my land and get compensation for it. Judge, how much are you asking for him to pay you? Me, $200,000. That's the estimate for the trees that he cut down on our property. We also want his fixtures removed from the land. Neighbor, there's no way those trees are worth that much. He is just trying to get rich off of me. Judge, you were aware that it's not your land when you started constructing buildings and cutting down trees. Neighbor, they were not using the land. It was just sitting around doing nothing, so I made something out of it. I added value, and that should cover the cost of the trees. Just because we were not actively using our family land does not mean that it still didn't belong to us. We had not sold any of our land until the day that happened. Nobody was allowed to touch it. We were granted the full amount we were asking for. As for the removal of the shed and the planted stuff, I had to wait until criminal court ordered him to do that. It was just a very long and annoying mess. I won't give any kind of suspense if he was found guilty of knowingly encroaching to obtain more land, illegally building the shed lying in court, etc. A lot of charges, but all of them minor enough that he was not gonna spend any time in jail. However, that does not mean that he didn't get some just desserts, and that came in the form of where he was getting the money to pay me. Well, if you don't have the cash to pay somebody in court, then you need to either sell some assets before the court does it for you. Instead of his land getting bigger, it ended up shrinking as he had to sell off some of the land to the neighbor on his other side to get enough money. You can also bet that I was building a fence on the property line so he would not get any more dumb ideas about trying it again. A dumb kid that grew into a dumb adult. I still wish that he would have done time in jail just so he would be out of my hair. I knew that if his parents were still alive, it might be the time they actually told their son off for anything. Losing some family land was an embarrassment, and he probably will never hear the end of it from the rest of his family. And before we end the video, we will read a story from r/petty revenge. This one is titled "Refuse Service When Legally You Can't." I hope you enjoy the fine. So I live in Portugal, and here when something happens at a commercial space, you write in the complaints book. My parents own a business, which means I'm fairly well informed about how these things work. I recently had an encounter at this kiosk with a man, and he lingered at my card checking numbers, names, flipped it over, looking at the CVV. It was uncomfortable. Onto the exchange. Me, good morning, I would like 2 packs of Winston 126 cigarettes. He proceeds to ask me for my card with a hand gesture. Him, it is 12.20. Hand gesture again. Me, I would prefer to insert the card myself. Him, you cannot do that. Me, I won't touch the machine at all, only insert the card. Him throws the machine down in disbelief and says, I cannot let you do that. Are you refusing service? Him, yes. I asked for the complaints book, he refused, which legally he can't, but it was just me and him. I wait until another client shows up and ask for it again. He relents and gives it to me. As I open it, I realize I did not have a pen. You have to write out your complaint. I ask for one, he refuses again, and I say okay. As soon as I open the book, I see something wrong. The first complaint is completely ripped out, all 3 pages are. The first page is for the person who makes the complaint, and the second is a copy for the business, and the third is to remain in the book. Under no circumstance is the third page to disappear, even if it is a mistake or taken back by the person who makes the complaint, it must remain in the book. Seeing as I had no pen, I start the process online, take the info, and start snapping pictures of the missing pages. As soon as he saw me taking pictures, he does a beeline from around the counter to me and tries to take the book away. I then said I have every right to keep this book until I'm done with my complaint. He gets huffy and more clients show up. He goes back behind the counter. The thing about these complaints books is that you write it in ink, but then you have to follow through and submit them online to the proper authority depending on the complaint. However, I did not have a pen, so I bypassed the ink format and immediately submitted online mentioning the weird analysis of my card, the refusal of service, and as the last middle finger on the FU sandwich. I also mentioned the missing pages with pictures of the missing pages itself, including the business stamp in the same picture, so they cannot refute that and say it's some other book. Now, because it was online, it goes straight to the authority ASAE, and you can choose which department depending on the complaint. After an hour of nicotine withdrawal of looking the business up the pictures and writing the complaint itself, I hand the book in with no written complaint. He opens it, chuckles to himself and says smugly, "Did you give up because you didn't have a pen?" I say no, because I didn't have a pen. I decided to submit it directly online, and as my last mic drop moment, I said I did not feel comfortable writing it in the book as the first complaint had magically disappeared from the book. The color drained from his face because we both knew what is gonna happen. Even if they don't take the complaint seriously, tampering with this book is absolutely taken serious, and that absolutely will be followed up and fined accordingly. Then I smiled and I said I wish I had a pen and left. And yeah guys, thank you for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.